Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Powerful Yemeni tribe clashes with police in Sanaa. North Sudan rejects UN call to withdraw from Abyei. And Bahrainis condemn death sentences for anti-regime protesters. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
The European Union decided to tighten sanctions on Syria by imposing them on the highest level of the Syrian leadership due to the authorities' continued crackdown on peaceful protests in the country.
Following U.S. sanctions, Europe took action to exert pressure on the Syrian regime, as the exhausting confrontation between the protesters and the regime does not seem to be coming to an end anytime soon. European foreign ministers considered sanctions necessary in order to put an end to what they referred to as the regime's crackdown on peaceful protests.
A wider range of sanctions on Syria, including...
We also believe that a wider range of sanctions on Syria, including freezing the assets of certain members and banning them from traveling, including the Syrian president, is necessary. I believe this is important to face the ongoing repression in Syria.
However, political observers doubt these sanctions will bring radical change to the course of events in Syria. And while protesters are tirelessly demonstrating night and day, despite their accusation that the regime is implementing all kinds of repressive measures, political observers say moral support from Europe and the U.S. will not lead to the resolution of the fateful confrontation in favor of protesters. These protesters are seeking to ride the wave of the spring of Arab anger, the same way it occurred in Egypt and Tunisia. Observers also say the regime, which is waging a media war against protesters by using images and words as a weapon, will not change its strategy in confronting the protests. That strategy is represented by using heavy-handed measures, while blaming armed gangs and foreign forces for being behind the turmoil witnessed in the country for over 2 months. As for the opposition and activists organizing protests, they aspire to attract more people to their side by using all means possible.
They didn't leave us anyone. They didn't leave us anyone to even talk to. My cousin is 15 years old. Isn't it shameful for them to do this? They woke me up. I was sleeping. They woke me up by firing close to my head. What is going on? I'm a little girl. What do I have to do with this?
It is certain the regime will answer these words the same way it has in the past, by doubting and discrediting them. Amid the absence of neutral media organizations in Syria, it is difficult to verify many of the images and words that are pouring out from both sides. In addition, the truth embodied by this confrontation is that Syria is very far from the seasons of stability. It is also difficult to predict the results of a showdown that is leading to additional fronts day after day, domestically and internationally.
يوما وراء يوم.
أصيب عدة أشخاص بجروح في صنعاء إثر مواجهات عنيفة استخدمت فيها رشاشات وقذائف الأرض.
A number of people were wounded in Sanaa during violent confrontations between the police and the Yemeni president's loyalist gunmen on one side and armed supporters of the Hashid tribe leader Sheikh Sadiq al-Akmar, who joined protests on the other side. Live bullets and RPG rockets were used during the clashes. Our BBC correspondent quoted local sources and eyewitnesses saying that clashes erupted after guards at Sheikh al-Akmar's house tried to prevent the police from storing weapons in Ramah School in the Hasba neighbourhood north of Sanaa. Meanwhile, protests and demonstrations continued, demanding the departure of President Ali Abdullah Saleh and his ruling regime, as reactions ensued to his rejection to signing the Gulf Initiative. The initiative aims at solving the crisis in Yemen on both regional and international levels.
We will see peace, security, and stability. If they do not comply, we will confront them by all possible means in every area.
Reactions varied to Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh's refusal to sign the Gulf Initiative, which is aimed at solving the crisis in his country. However, nearly everyone held Saleh responsible for the failure of the Gulf and Western efforts at mediation. At the conclusion of the foreign ministers' meeting in Riyadh Sunday evening, the Gulf Cooperation Council announced the suspension of its efforts on the initiative after President Saleh refused to sign the agreement to end the crisis. The statement issued at the end of the meeting simply stated that the Council decided to suspend its work on the initiative due to lack of appropriate conditions. The United States expressed great disappointment in Saleh's continuing refusal to sign the Gulf Initiative. In a statement to Saleh, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton accused Saleh of shirking his obligations and disregarding the Yemeni people's legitimate aspirations. Clinton added that Saleh is now the only side that refuses to accept the initiative, affirming that he should immediately fulfill his obligations to a peaceful and organized transition of power and to meeting the legitimate demands of the Yemeni people. President Saleh's refusal to sign the Gulf Initiative was one of the most important issues discussed in the EU's meeting for foreign and defense ministers.
We'll also be, of course, expressing our concern about what happened in Yemen after President Saleh once again refused to sign the initiative to take the country out of its crisis.
On Sunday, President Saleh refused to sign the Gulf Initiative amid high tension that dominated the capital, Sanaa, and other Yemeni cities. The Gulf Cooperation Council's Secretary General left without President Saleh's signature. He was evacuated by helicopter from the Emirates Embassy, where he and ambassadors from Washington, London, and the EU were encircled by Saleh's armed loyalists. Anwar Al-Ansi, BBC.
In Pakistan's city of Karachi, the Taliban stormed an Air Force base, leading to battles that lasted until morning.
على هذه المشاهد استيقظ أهالي مدينة كراتشي العاصمة الاقتصادية.
The residents of Karachi, the economic capital of Pakistan, woke up to these images. Columns of fire lit the city's sky in the early morning after having been shaken by the sound of a number of loud explosions. Some residents went to the scene of the incident, where they learned that an armed attack targeted the Mehran Air Base. There, armed men breached the base and clashed with forces inside, leading to the death and injury of a number of soldiers, including an officer.
We were surprised by a terrible blast in the early morning. We did not know what had happened, but soon learned that an explosion took place in an airbase in the city. We saw flames rising from over there and smoke covered the sky.
A Pakistani army source confirmed the gunmen destroyed 2 warplanes in the base and that counter battles erupted between Pakistani forces and the gunmen who managed to storm the base. Immediately after the attack, army and police forces cordoned off the base while ambulances rushed to the scene. The echo of the explosion woke the government in Islamabad to issue a statement on the attack.
The attack on the base was undoubtedly waged by terrorists. The clashes at the base are ongoing between armed forces and armed terrorist elements. It is, of course, the Taliban that is behind this terrorist attack.
Only a short period of time after the attack, the Pakistani Taliban claimed responsibility for it. The spokesman for the movement vowed additional attacks to avenge Osama bin Laden's death, saying his attackers have enough supplies to confront the siege for 3 days. This attack is reminiscent of the 2009 bombing that targeted the military headquarters in Rawalpindi, leading to fears that the highly protected military facilities are not immune to attacks by gunmen.
The Afghani Taliban denied the killing of its leader Mullah Omar, saying he is alive in Afghanistan. A security official in Pakistan, diplomats, American military commanders, and Afghani government officials doubted reports saying Mullah Omar was killed in Pakistan while en route from Quetta to the northern Waziristan region.
جولة المباحثات التي عقدها أعضاء مجلس الأمن الدولي في العاصمة السودانية مع الحكومة.
Following their meeting with the Sudanese government in Khartoum, the UN Security Council delegation has demanded the immediate withdrawal of northern Sudanese forces from the disputed region of Abyei. The Council's members said that the escalation of military operations by the Sudanese army constitutes a blatant violation of the 2005 peace accord. They also called on all sides to restore calm and resume negotiations for a political settlement on Abyei. Meanwhile, the Sudanese Minister of State for the Presidency, Amin Hassan Omar, said that the Sudanese army would remain in the Abyei region, adding that his government is willing to negotiate. The Sudanese army entered the region 2 days ago.
The members of the Security Council call on.
The members of the Security Council call upon the government of Sudan to halt its military operation and immediately withdraw from the town of Abyei and its surrounding areas. The Security Council also condemns the attack on the UN mission in Sudan by southern forces.
On Saturday, northern Sudanese forces carried out an incursion into Abyei, and by Sunday they were able to seize full control of the region. According to a Sudanese official at the presidential office, the army would remain in Abyei until new security arrangements are made aimed at preventing the Sudan People's Liberation Army, SPLA, from entering the region. The southern Sudanese government of Juba said the military action by northern forces is an illegitimate occupation. It also urged the Sudanese army to withdraw from Abyei, warning that the recent battles could drag the country once again into a civil war. Sami al-Shinawi reports from Khartoum.
The Abyei conflict continues to strain relations between partners of the Nafasha peace agreement. In light of the latest military confrontations, the Sudanese ruling parties in the north and the south have escalated their political rhetoric. This news comes after the northern Sudanese army seized full control of the Abyei region in violation of peace agreements authorizing the deployment of joint forces to the region under UN monitoring. The Khartoum government reiterated that the north reserves a right of sovereignty over Abyei. Khartoum further said that the presence of its forces in Abyei will help guarantee security and stability in the region by restraining activities of the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement, the SPLM.
Until we reach a new security arrangement, the army will act as the guard of the region to ensure that the SPLA forces do not infiltrate the region again.
As northern Sudanese forces insist on remaining in the Abyei region, the SPLM demanded Khartoum complies with the Nafasha agreement. The SPLM strongly rejected a decision by the Sudanese president to dismantle the Abyei council without consulting his deputy in the south, Salva Kiir Mayardit.
The incursion into this region by the armed forces violates the peace agreement. Al-Bashir's decision to disband the region's administration violates the Constitution and the peace accord. We demand the North recommit to the peace agreement.
While its forces were engaging in armed confrontations with the People's Liberation Army, Khartoum met with the UN Security Council peace delegation. The raging situation in Abyei prevented the Security Council delegation from visiting the region. The Council's members are expected to meet with the southern government of Juba. Observers believe that the UN Security Council's visit to Sudan will not help diffuse tension in the region, as both sides of the Nafasha agreement continue to claim sovereignty over the disputed region of Abyei.
The solution is at the hands of the people of the region, namely the Dinka Nok and the Messaria tribes. The National Congress and the People's Movement must work together to solve this issue.
Despite UN calls on Khartoum to withdraw its army to the north, the armed confrontations continue to dominate the region of Abyei. This bloody escalation will likely deepen the crisis between the two neighbouring states. Sami al-Shinawi, Dubai TV, Khartoum.
The People in Bahrain's village of Sanaa have held a demonstration condemning the death penalty verdicts against 2 anti-regime activists. The demonstrators also chanted slogans against the Al Khalifa regime, demanding its downfall. They carried banners calling for human rights and condemning execution verdicts. Earlier, anti-regime protesters staged a similar rally in the village of Karana. The protests come a day after an appeals court upheld death sentences against 2 protesters convicted of killing 2 police officers during anti-regime demonstrations. Dozens of people have been killed and hundreds more arrested by Saudi-backed Bahraini forces since opposition protests began in February. The Saudi-backed forces have also abducted many people, including doctors, nurses, teachers and students. In Morocco, dozens of anti-government protesters have been injured in clashes with riot police in several cities. Reports say police wielding batons chased demonstrators marching through the streets of the capital Rabat on Sunday. The protesters wanted to camp outside the parliament building despite a ban on demonstrations. According to a protest movement, a total of about 60 activists have been injured in Rabat, Casablanca, Agadir and Tangier. Meanwhile, officials put the number of injured at about 20 demonstrators and police officers combined. Morocco has stepped up crackdowns on demonstrators who've been demanding reform, freedom and better living conditions. On to Libya now, where forces loyal to ruler Muammar Gaddafi have pounded the northwestern town of Zintan near the border with Tunisia. Pro-Gaddafi forces have been shelling revolutionary fighters' positions in the desert near Zintan for several days now. There have also been reports of a build-up of pro-Gaddafi troops just outside the nearby city of Yafran. Libyan revolutionary forces say Gaddafi troops are planning to launch an offensive to take the city. Elsewhere, heavy fighting has continued between government troops and revolutionary forces around Misrata. The area has been under almost daily attacks from Gaddafi loyalists since mid-March. 4 more US-led foreign troops have been killed in Afghanistan. The soldiers died in a bomb explosion in the east of the war-torn country. Most of the foreign troops based in eastern Afghanistan are American. The deaths bring to at least 188 the number of NATO forces killed in Afghanistan this year. The rising NATO casualties are causing anger in the member states of the alliance over the Afghan war. Another US airstrike in Pakistan, an American drone attack has killed 7 people in the country's tribal regions. The US pilot's plane fired 4 missiles at a vehicle in North Waziristan. Washington has stepped up its air attacks in Pakistan since President Obama took office in 2009. The Washington Post last year revealed that Obama has given the CIA the go-ahead to further expand the airstrikes in Pakistan. The US claims the attacks target militants. However, figures show most of the victims are civilians. Islamabad has condemned the US attacks, saying they violate its sovereignty. Pakistani people have also held numerous rallies against the non-UN sanctioned drone strikes.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be the headliner tonight at the AIPAC Policy Conference, where delegates are still buzzing over yesterday's speech by President Barack Obama. The Prime Minister's address is expected to clarify Israel's position on security demands, peace talks, and Palestinian statehood. IBA's Eli Wagalanter brings us more.
The diplomatic point-counterpoint between President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continued yesterday, with the president spelling out to the AIPAC delegates exactly what he meant by his controversial remarks on Thursday night about the 1967 lines.
And since my position has been misrepresented several times, let me reaffirm what 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps means. By definition, it means that the parties themselves, Israelis and Palestinians, will negotiate a border that is different than the one that existed on June 4th, 1967. That's what mutually agreed upon swaps means. It is a well-known formula to all who have worked on this issue for a generation. It allows the parties themselves to account for the changes that have taken place over the last 44 years.
Obama's words to Washington's most powerful pro-Israel lobbying group seemed to soothe over the tensions that exploded publicly last week. After Obama endorsed the long-standing Palestinian demand on the borders of their future state, Netanyahu stunned the president the next day when he warned against seeking peace based on illusions and declared that Israel would never pull back to old demarcation lines as they were indefensible. After Obama's interpretation and clarification yesterday, the ball is now back in Netanyahu's court. In his speech to AIPAC tonight, the Prime Minister is expected to explain how he foresees reviving the comatose peace process. Observers believe Netanyahu's words could be more conciliatory, both toward Obama and to the Palestinians. Netanyahu issued a statement after Obama's speech yesterday that was far more accommodating than his words last week, promising to work together with President Obama to find ways to resume the peace negotiations. Peace, he said, is crucial for all of us. Other analysts say that no words tonight from Netanyahu can cover up the same lack of trust and coordination between the two administrations that has been festering for 2 years. Meanwhile, Obama landed in Ireland today, kicking off a four-nation European tour, including attending the G8 summit in France. He is expected to try to convince European leaders not to support a unilateral statehood bid by the Palestinians in September. Ellie Wogelanter, IBA News.
A vote of confidence for President Barack Obama's Middle East policy from the European Union. EU foreign ministers said, like Obama, they also believe a peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians should be based on the 1967 boundaries. Sweden's Carl Bildt called Prime Minister Netanyahu's rejection of the 67 borders indefensible, while Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton stressed that Europe and the White House see eye to eye on the issue.
Well, the European Union has had a common position for a long time, which says that they should start the process on the basis of 1967 borders with land swaps to reflect the changes that have happened on the ground. And we stand by the position that we've had consistently, I think first in December 2009 and then reiterated again last year. And we believe that that's a good place to begin the negotiations. Most importantly, we believe it's in Israel's real interests for the people of Israel and the people of Palestine to get those negotiations moving now.
It's also important to support what President Obama said last week about the Middle East peace process. Of course, this means now that the position of the EU and the United States is much closer together on this subject, and we're looking forward to discussing that with President Obama in London over the next couple of days on the state visit, and that and the whole range of foreign affairs issues with Secretary Clinton later on today in London.
Well, while Obama was speaking at the AIPAC policy conference, a small group of anti-Obama protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. At the demonstration, which was organized by the Facebook group My Israel, right-wing activists hoisted banners reading, "Israel won't commit to suicide," "Israel can't be divided," and "No to the Auschwitz lines of 1949. Reacting to Obama's insistence that a two-state solution be based on the 1967 lines, one protester wore a noose around his neck.
We want a secure peace. We deserve a secure peace, and we don't deserve a peace that we can't defend. And we have President Obama, please don't be a one-term president. Be a president who makes brave choices, who makes real choices, who makes smart, well-informed choices. Don't send Israel to its death by supporting policies that are wrong, that are popular but wrong.
The Journalist Syndicate's Freedom Committee organized a celebration in the city of Suez to honor the families of the martyred and injured during the January 25th revolution.
During the celebration, the martyrs' families affirmed their confidence in the impartiality and justice of the Egyptian judiciary. They demanded urgent and immediate punishment of those responsible for causing the loss of life and injury of hundreds of this country's citizens. The city of Suez is the land of resistance, the symbol of history, and the land of the martyr. It witnessed the first bloodshed in the Revolution for Change and painted an epic image that was added to the town's history. But what about the stories of the last martyrs that Suez offered the nation?
He left 2 hours later. I then saw his colleagues asking me if this was the house of Muhammad Ahmad Yusuf. I told them it was. They told me, "Your son is in the morgue." I said, "No, you are liars, you lie. My son was just with me." I went there not knowing how. I was like a crazy person on the street.
Once it calmed down, one of the youths in Suez tried to get him or move him in order to save him. He was shot in the head and died immediately.
This mother mourning her son is proud of her martyr. She says he lived a decent life, but despite everything, he sought to sacrifice himself so others could live.
I haven't slept since. I swear I haven't slept. I need my son. He's my right. He's my blood. They killed my son. Why? What did he do?
The blame, all the blame, was directed at the media. The residents of Suez accused the media of distorting their role instead of shedding light on them.
I am only asking for my rights. In truth, the media has granted us our rights. What happened from January 25th to January 28th was a war, and everyone in the media was at Tahrir Square. Up until now, we haven't seen a single camera in Suez revealing the truth.
For the sake of this country, many people have sacrificed their lives. The city of Suez played a major role throughout Egyptian history, and did so again most recently with the blood of these innocent young people. Hikmat Abdul Hamid, Nile TV.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.